everybody. It's Diane Brandon Moody. I'm here again with 50 Something Love. This is the podcast for all things for women over 50. I'm delighted you're back. I have a very special episode to share with you this week and next week. It's a two-parter. I am talking with Mike Watts. You may know him better as married to Kate Northrup and co-founder of their company, Kate Northrup. And what we're going to talk about today is conscious men. So what do we mean by that? Well, we're going to talk about it in the episode. So I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Please give a listen this week, next week. If you've got men in your life, this is a perfect episode for them to listen to. So anyway, here we go with our conversation, Diane Brandon Moody and Mike Watts on Conscious Men. Thank you so much for being here. I have two firsts with us today. It's the first time we've had a man as a guest on the podcast, and it's the first time that he's not over 50. He's younger than 50, but I still thought it was pretty relevant, and I thought he would be a good interview. So allow me to introduce Mike Watts. He is co-founder, that's correct, right? Co-founder of KateNorthrup.com. Right now, they're in the middle of a great program called Relaxed Money, where you learn about how your nervous system relates to your money and your money habits. And I'm a part of it. I'm enjoying it. It's been a great group so far. So just wanted to say hi, Mike. Thanks for joining us.
Hi. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for taking a risk on being your first man and someone under 50. So thank you.
I don't think it's much of a risk, but I appreciate it. The main reason I wanted to ask you on here is I'm a dating coach for people over 50. And by the time one gets to be 50, and if you're either still single or single again for whatever reason, being widowed or divorced or whatever, you get to this stage and it's common to be brokenhearted or angry that you haven't found what you're looking for yet. Women complain about men sending inappropriate pictures online or asking inappropriate questions, and men have their own complaints as well. But I don't know you personally, but I've been a part of yours and Kate's world for a while now, and you seem to me to be a very conscious man, something that I think we need more of in the world. So that's why I invited you to join us. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about on this is how do women find conscious men? How do men become a little bit more conscious? Maybe you even have a better term for that. So how would you describe a guy like you, somebody I would say is conscious?
What can you define, just so we're all on the same page, like when you say conscious man or being conscious, what do you mean by that? Just so I think because it's to define it.
You're right. Thanks.
Yeah.
You're right. It can be a kind of a vague term. To me, it's the kind of guy who is uplifting people in the room, women, other men. He's conscious about what he does and says most of the time. He's not a perfect Disney prince. He's a guy, but he is somebody who is looking to up-level his life and perhaps the lives of others. That would be my quick definition.
I like that. So
Good.
I guess I would fit into that category. I would put myself in that word. Yeah, I think from my perspective, I don't really know how women go about finding that, because that's not like I am sorry to bust everybody's bubble there, but
it's okay.
I don't have the one-term solution. But here's what I do know about what's worked for myself and with my wife. So I am 41, just to define. I'm 41. I have been married for 10 years. I have 2 children. Kate and I met, our first date was around the United States. We did 34,000 miles for 10 months, and we visited 41 states. We spent 6 months then living in Eastern Long Island in the area called the Hamptons. And we rented a house in the middle of winter from one of Kate's friends. that was not winterized. It was hilarious. And then we moved to Maine, and we lived in Maine. And I grew up in the Midwest. I've lived all over the United States. So just like, and now we currently live in Miami. So I think for me, what I realized over time, and our business, as Diane stated, as you stated, like, is a business that my wife is the face of it, and 90% of our customers are folks who identify as female, right? So I have been around women my entire life. Like my parents are still married. My dad traveled so much when I was younger. He would come home for a couple days, be gone for 2 weeks, and I was pretty much raised by my mom. My dad would come and go type thing. And so I've always been around large numbers of women in my life. And college was the same way, high school was the same way, and our company is laid out that way as well. So I have a lot of experience just being in those circles and listening to what people's gripes and stories and experiences are. So that, I would say, is what really gave me a lot of perspective, because there was a lot of damage that was done in my life from playing sports and watching coaches. I always thought it was very weird to watch coaches on TV and just scream at their players, like grown men.
Yeah.
Like having a
That's
professional coach just like screaming. And I was like, these guys are like 35 years old. Like, what are you doing? So, but for me, it was just like, I always wanted to, I think a lot of it came out of trying to make my mother happy and that whole parent showing up type thing. And then I had to learn to like break away from the enmeshment that existed. Right. And so it's like, how did I go about doing that? Well, I just became interested in improving myself. And it's like, okay, how do I, in my way, was like, okay, I want to be better. Why? If I improve myself, I think I'll make more money. And so making money for me became a game. When I started, whether I was working in corporate or I started my own business, I was like, okay, if I keep doing these things inside of corporate, it's like the goal was, how do I end up on the cover of Forbes magazine? So then I was driven materialistic items, all of these things. That's traditional and ego driven. And then I dated a lot, but then I met Kate. And what I realized is like, there wasn't the pushback, or there was more pushback that came from her than other women that I dated. And so when I started doing that, I was like, oh, this isn't going to work the same way. Like, I just can't be like, she's not a pushover, I guess you could put it that way. And so that's her own journey of her own strengths and abilities and confidence and et cetera, that's there. But for me to just end up where we are today, to be recognized by you as this conscious man, I just was always open to improving myself. And I never thought I had an answer. Obviously, I've done a lot of unsolicited advice that I've given people, thinking that I'm an 8 on the Enneagram scale, if you're familiar with that. So I think I'm right all the time. I'm a Virgo, so everyone else doesn't know what the heck they're talking about. Oh, great. So
double Virgo, by the way.
Yeah, that's great. So then I have Scorpio rising. And so I have this.
Me too.
Oh, wow. When's your birthday?
September 20th.
Oh, wow. Okay. September 4th.
Yeah.
So this is like, I just like have a lot of fire. And then I really realized like, okay, I'm not right all the time. And this would be categorized as like mansplaining, or, we could put it whatever bubble you want. But it was just more of the fact that I started listening. I started getting very sick, and then I started getting injured. So these type of things, in the end, it was teaching me how to listen to my body more about what I was going through. But I started realizing this much earlier on. And yeah, I just was really open to becoming a better person. I feel like that's like a lot of people like, what's the purpose of life? And I was like, I just like to be a better person when I die than when I was, as like years go on. Right. And have fun, in that process. So, and then I've just like really put myself in uncomfortable situations. And what do you choose to do? So it's like moving a lot. I ended up moving a lot, starting a business, running a business, getting married. And then you have kids. And then I'm training, not training, but I'm giving the option for my children to be vocal and have their own thoughts and opinions, because my relationship, there was a guy that told me a long time ago, he had a great relationship with his kids. And I said, what you have advice? Like, I'm about to have a baby. And he goes, I'm always interested in my children. Like,
yeah,
and
that's
I am
great.
not here. And so it's a classic sales tactic, right? It's like, be interesting, or excuse me, be interested, not
Right,
interesting.
right.
So
Uh-huh.
like, stop talking and listening. And the same thing with the kids. Like, I don't feel I'm actually here to teach my kids anything. It's a really weird take I have than most people. Guys are all the same way. It's like, I'm here to teach my son how to hunt, and we're gonna get our own food, and we're gonna go out there and farm, and then we're gonna blah blah blah. And I'm like, I don't really care about any of that. It's just
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm here to teach my kids nothing. And I'm just here to be with them, because that's really, at the end of the day, what they want. At least for that I've seen, they just want quality time. That's it. And for me, I'm just like, okay. And then my kids are actually going to teach me everything that I don't want to learn, right, about myself. And
Isn't
so
that their point?
that is why they're here. And so it's my job to listen to them and decide if I'm going to ignore them, or decide if I'm going to pay attention to them and actually work on the things that they're telling me. It's like, it's really uncomfortable to have a 5-year-old look at you in the face and just say, I don't like the way you're speaking to me. Not in a just like in a very genuine way, to just be like, you hurt my feelings when you said this to me.
Wow.
And to have that coming from my 5-year-old or 6-year-old at bedtime, of course, it all activates my 5 or 6-year-old self. And I'm just like, no, that's not right. That's not. And then I'm just like, you're right, Penelope. You're right. The way I spoke to you was incorrect. This is why I did that. And I will work to not do it again. And it's just like, there's like, how is it great to just have somebody that feels that free to speak their own mind about the way you're making them feel?
That's utterly amazing. I'm thinking back to my own parents, who were basically good people. My mother's alive. My dad died a long time ago. But if I had said, I don't like the way you're speaking to me, I don't know, I would have gotten the backhand of something, that just wouldn't have flown. I'm the boss.
Yeah.
You listen. So to have a generation of kids who can speak frankly, but, respectfully, but frankly, that doesn't work is congratulations. That's amazing.
Thanks. And it's my job to just like keep working on that. And Kate and I have been to a lot of therapy together. And I didn't even, growing up, I mean, I grew up in Indiana. Like, it was in the middle of cornfield. I didn't really grow up in cornfields, but there was cornfields around me. And
I spent my summers in Indiana. That's where my grandparents lived. My mother's from there, east
whereabouts?
of Milton, Indiana, around Cambridge City, Connorsville, Richmond, that
Oh,
area.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Down south. But I just like didn't know what therapy was. Like, it was never brought up to me.
Yeah.
You hear it's when people, like, we had kids that would commit suicide, or people would die in school, and they're like, okay, there's people available for you to talk to. And I'm like, oh, okay. I thought it was around like traumatic death is what I thought therapy was associated with. And then I met Kate, and we were on our road trip, and she comes from New England. So, I mean, everybody in New England just has a therapist on payroll. And I'm joking about that.
Funny.
But it is funny because I go hang out with all these people in New England. They're all like, my therapist, this. Now it's me. I'm my therapist. Right. So that's turned into me. And it's been a process that I've had to learn how to work through. And then what I've learned in therapy. So Kate and I each have our own therapists separately. My therapist is the same one we use, our couples therapist. And she asked me on a road trip right off the bat, like in the first, when we were traveling, and it's just like, if we ever had trouble in our marriage, would you see a therapist? And I was like, okay, like, I guess so. Like, I don't know. I've never seen one. But I was like, well, if I'm running a company, I need to hire a marketing person. Like, I don't know what to do with marketing. So I was like, oh, it's okay. So it's like that for your relationship. Great. And, about 3 years later, 2.5 years later, we were fighting about stuffed peppers in the base, or we having conflict about stuffed peppers in our kitchen. And I was like, this is stupid. Like, what are we doing? And Kate was like, I think it's time we see a therapist. And I was like, okay, great. And since then, I learned a lot of tools from there. And obviously, being in the business that we're in, about your relationship with money, your central nervous system, like the healing that requires around that, has helped a lot of that. And then I realized by going to men's events, so I would start seeking out support through guys,
Mm-hmm.
um, like men who are teachers, and being around other dudes and having better relationship with other men and having friends. Because at the end of the day, I wanted to have more man friends. When we lived in Maine, that was very challenging to create, honestly. Like, it was very challenging. It's like Maine's environment was much more like family oriented,
Yeah.
and there wasn't a lot of, it's like guys hanging out. When you come to Miami or a city, you're like, dudes want to do stuff all the time. So it's still family oriented, obviously, but there's like a commitment to hang out with other guys. So then I would go and get teaching from other men and take these courses and programs and keep diving into myself. And then went to this Sacred Sons event, which I really like. So it's called Sacred. The organization's called Sacred Sons. They run a huge men's community, because the issue with the men's community is a little bit what I already referred to earlier that I've noticed. It's either very religious based. It's like everything is about Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really want that, because I wanted something that was more middle of the road,
Right.
not everything's about Jesus type thing, right? Nothing
Right.
wrong with that.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't what I was vibing. And then there's the other side that's very militaristic side, where it's like, you got to wake up all at a certain time, you got to get dressed at a certain time, you got to do this, we got to bang our hands on the table at a certain time. It's like all of that. Like, I don't want that either, because I feel like
That's
our
kind of
experience
a cliche of male,
very much
like
so.
very much so. Yeah.
And there's guys that need structure, right? So like, you need structure, you need to get your stuff in order, like, go to that. And then I wanted a place that was inclusive to gay men, straight men, trans men, like all of the varieties of men,
Mm-hmm.
that welcomes everyone. And
That's
so
wonderful.
that is a place that I was like looking for a place that happens. And then also diversity as a place as well, right? It's like having a variety of men that show up. And the organization called Sacred Sons, I really feel that checked all the boxes. And I went to that, and they explained at their event that men cannot heal they can't heal with women. They have to be around other men to heal.
I
And I
agree
was like,
with that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like I was like, oh, like a light bulb went off. And I was like, oh, that's why I'm here. Great. Okay, let's do that. Because it's women, what I've realized is like, can heal through, as you say, conscious men. They can
Mm-hmm.
heal their relationship with men, with other men who are showing up in a certain way. But men cannot heal their relationship with men through women, if
Yeah.
that makes right.
Yeah.
So,
I would agree with that. Yeah.
yeah. So that's kind of that's how it that's the 20-minute explanation of me being here with you.
Oh, that's great. I love it. Congratulations on your 10-year anniversary, by the way. That's wonderful. What would you say you and Kate do well together at?
We really like each other. That's one thing I would say that starts there, is that we genuinely like spending time together. And I was getting my haircut once, and my barber was explaining this to we were talking, just chit chatting, and he goes, I feel like he was in this relationship that was a lot of ups and downs and kind of rocky. And I known him for a long time. And so he was like, I feel like you and Kate really like each other. And I was like, we do. I was like, that's why I'm with her. And he goes, huh. I was like, you like your lady? He goes, I like her, but I don't think she likes me. I mean, sometimes I like her. And I was like, to me, that's no, like, you don't.
Yeah.
And
Life's too short, man.
yeah. And I was like, it was kind of like a clarity to be like, wow, people just stay with people because, and they don't even like them sometimes. So I think for us is we have a common direction that we want to go. And obviously we're all evolving. Like, who Kate and I are today, 10 years into our marriage, is not who we were 10 years ago. Right. It's like completely different. And in certain ways, like in certain ways they're the same. But I would say the majority of it is that we've learned to work through our stuff much faster. So like, we just went away on this trip. We went to Bermuda and then Colombia, and this was all part of the 10th anniversary that we did. And in Bermuda, we got into some stuff, and we were able to work through There's a guy by the name of Mr. Jason Williams. He's written a number of books. He helps men in Detroit. He helps actually boys. His organization focuses on helping Black boys in Detroit to not end up on the street and like ending up in gangs, etc. And so he's written a couple of books. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but they're fantastic. And he said the way him and his wife talk about like arguing or fighting is they call it conflict. And I started to really like resonate that term more than like we're arguing or fighting, because Kate and I aren't punching each other. Like we're not actually fighting. I know that exists in relationships, unfortunately, right? So we had a small conflict that took place in Bermuda, but we were able to work through it in 12 hours instead of taking 12 days. You know, like that used to be eight or 9 years ago. We'd just be resenting each other, walking around grumpy, like not really sure how to do it. So we've just been able to do things faster and moving through things much quicker. In terms of shared interests, we have a shared interest. That's our company. Like we run that together. We also have kids. We also put a high priority on our marriage. So we both like to go sit at the movies and watch movies together. We like to do hobbies together. I have my own hobbies though. She likes to get her nails and hair done and hang out with her girlfriends at the spa. I like to go to soccer games, right? So there are and build Legos, as you can see. I don't know. There's Legos all over my background. And like we have different hobbies, but we have shared interest in that as well. But then we're very organized with our time and communication. Because we have a company together, this also has changed over time, because before we had kids, we could talk about business all day long, every hour, every minute, from the time we wake up to the time we go to bed, plan, go out to eat, go out to lunch, go out to dinner, which we used to do a lot in Maine. Now with kids, can't really do that. Like it's hard to talk about business while you're washing the dishes and like getting the kids to school. It becomes a little challenging. And it's just like nothing gets done because it goes in one ear and out the other. So we have planned meetings with it, right? It's like we have our money meeting that takes place on Fridays. We have our scheduling meeting that happens on Sundays. We have business meetings during the week where we talk about those specific business things. So we've really tried to silo communication in that way. And then we just love adventures. Like we like taking trips. And we really also, which includes solo time. You know, it's like as we go on a journey or on a trip, hopefully some of that is being by ourselves together. So that's kind of what we enjoy doing.
That's awesome. I love hearing about that. So on the topic of evolution, and since most people listening are over 50, what would you like life to look like when you're around 50? You got a while.
I have 9 years, 8. Sorry, I'll be 42 this year. What would I like my life to look like when I'm 50? Well, my kids are going to be a little bit older, right? So it's like a different phase. Honestly, literally similar to what I'm doing now. Like I still want to run a company together. It's going to evolve in something else than what it is now. I already know that. We're in the process of putting the foundation together for that to take place. I have a lot, I have a lot of freedom from a standpoint of choosing, because we run our company, and then like choosing to do travel, etc. And then just like hanging out with my kids and like still being able to go to their things and hanging out with friends. I'd like to do more. I've been obsessed with the old men. This is what I have been saying since I was like 16, the breakfast clubs. Like when all the dudes are like 70 years old, 80 years old, just hanging out, eating breakfast on like every morning, getting coffee. That's what I'm looking forward to. Like that is the time where all my friends are like, at the point of like leaving their jobs or retiring or whatever. And we're all just hanging out at breakfast at 6 o'clock in the morning because, everybody's up and just having coffee. Like that's what I would say. I would
maybe like playing a little dominoes.
It could be pickleball. It could be something like that. And I think because the phase of young children will be a little bit farther along with all my buddies and I think that's possible. So that's probably going to change when I'm 50. But I think on a day-to-day basis, like if I'm still doing what I'm doing now, like that sounds pretty good.
That sounds great. I love it. So there are episodes that I encourage the women to make sure that their significant other, if they have one, listens to something, and that's going to be one of these. So without telling people what to do, because I know that never works with men, but If somebody goes, oh, I want to be kind of like that, I want to be more like that, what would be a suggestion or two for you?
Talking specifically to men.
Yeah, if you're
Yeah.
speaking to men.
I would say if you're married, like if your partner, or you're in a long-term partnership, right? You don't have to be married, or just in a partnership in general. I would actually having a real conversation with your partner, whether it's heterosexual or homosexual relationship, doesn't really matter. But just like, what are their desires and visions for the future? And like having a real conversation with that without distractions. It's leaving the phones in the other room. You could bring like a kitchen timer or set a timer for 20 minutes and actually getting to know that person. And stuff is going to come up. You're going to start feeling stuff in your body. You're going to want to check out. You're going to want to be like, oh, I would love to travel once a month to some country. Okay, how are we going to afford that? How are we going to do that? How are we going to do that? And I think for me, what's been very helpful is when I get stuck in the how, because as dudes, we're problem solvers. Not everyone, not all men. There's guys I've hung out with that don't even think about solving a problem, period. I have friends that are the most disorganized dudes I have ever met. And I'm just like, what is happening? Like, how do you run your life? I don't get it. Right. Being Virgo and controlling as I am. It's like, but I think like those feelings of insecurity are the feelings that can, when you really tap into the insecure feelings and switch them, and there's going to be some dudes listening to this that have no idea what I'm talking about right now, but you can feel it when you're watching certain things or in a room, or if somebody asks you something, and it's a sensation that kicks up that's like, I have to fix this problem now. And when you mess around with that feeling or those, and journal about it, write about it, sing about it, song, right, whatever you want to do, go to a therapist about it. That is where the true superpower is. And for us, and that will create as Diane said, to start off this conversation, of like the consciousness that happens.
Right.
And then also I would second, based off my new book title that I'm not writing at this point, but this is what we learned in Bermuda. It's called The Panty Dropper.
Hey, everybody, it's Diane Brandon Moody, and I'm back after the first half of that really interesting and cool, I'll just say it, cool conversation with Mike Watts on conscious men and where it comes from for him, how he's changed his life, all the exciting things that he shares with raising two daughters. So I hope you come back for next week, because there's another whole half hour that we'll be talking with Mike. So in the meantime, I just wanted to remind you that I am a dating coach for people over 50. You can get a free guide of where to find 50 places that you can meet people over 50. And it's on my website, dianebrandonmoody.com. For those of you who just hate dating apps but don't know where to go to meet people, I can't wait to see you there. And thank you so much for listening. Hey, if you like this episode, share it with a friend. Tell somebody about it. Give me a like. Tell me something. Give me some feedback. I'm open to all of it. Thanks, guys. Love you all. Thanks for being here.